personally at this, I think a very legitimate question has to be asked is Nestory Irankunda better than Erling Haaland? Because at 17 years and 1 month, Nestory Irankunda has played 26 games, scored 7 goals, and got 2 assists. When Erling Haaland was 17 years old and 1 month, he had played 46 games, scored 6 goals, and only got 1 assist. So the stats don't lie, and I'm not saying anything, but look at the numbers. Just look at them. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 2 Footed Tackle Podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. We're back again for another episode as the camera framing isn't quite right, and I probably should have done this before filming, but this is what you call professionalism 101. Is that better? We're going to go with that. That looks slightly better. And if you've not noticed, here's like a little insight. The camera isn't actually framed properly. Well, basically, a couple of things, and this is going to be a very long tangent, and this is actually going to suit the theme of this podcast, because I have nothing to talk about, just quietly. But if for those watching on YouTube, for those listening on Spotify, I apologise, because you'll have no idea what I'm about to speak about. But these things behind me, these like posters behind me, when I put them up initially, and I went to record, I was like, hey, they look a bit wonky. So, and I was like, what? Why is that? Why is that so? And I realised that for the first maybe 50 episodes of this podcast, I was filming with my camera on a very, very noticeable diagonal, on a very noticeable slant, and it wasn't noticeable because there was nothing in the background, it was just a plain white wall. So, there you go. And then once I fixed that, I realized, oh yeah, it looks really weird if I position myself actually central of both the paintings, and I move my camera so that it's actually central, because of this kind of wall, because of this wall type thing. Like I say, wall type thing. It's called a wall, because it's like obviously the end of the back wall and it moves onto the side. It looks a lot shorter than what it does, and it looks a lot closer to the wall than what it does. So if I position the camera in the middle of both those posters, it makes the framing look really, really odd and makes it look really weird. So, yeah, there you go. There's some carpentry lessons from me, a person who's never been within 50 metres of power tool and went to a grammar school. So that's why I'm not a chippy, and that's why I chat shit about football for 45-50 minutes a week. Yeah, so there's something. I hope everyone's well. Labor Day, a public holiday for those who live in Victoria, for those who live in Australia and Victoria. Well, yeah, so, yeah, I'm just going to be honest. I don't know. I've got nothing to speak about. Hence the really long intro. There was, yeah, there was not a lot, there was not a lot of things that happened over the weekend and over the week of football. So I'm just going to try and fill time for as much as possible. Not fill time, but this is going to be the definition of a reset pod. Now, a reset pod is a term coined by the James and Flav for Now podcast. James on a Talker hosts it, and it's basically just a pod where there's no real running order, no real run sheet, just kind of try and chat shit. And if this is your first podcast, go back and listen to the other ones, because those will be actual podcasts and actually about football. This probably won't even be about football for the most of it. They've just got nothing to speak about. So yeah, if this is your first pod, go back and watch the other pods. So, because they're probably a little bit more down your alley if you want actual football chat. But basically, the first line of my podcast, of my run sheet, is just chat shit in block capitals. So that's good, isn't it? We're going to be touching on the Barcelona corruption thing, Gary Lineker and the BBC, and then the A-League where chat as well, and Victoria playing in exactly an hour. So in 57 minutes, Victoria kicking off. So I would hope to get this done by the time. That game starts, so I can go and watch it. So yeah, let's kick things off. Make sure you subscribe to 2 Footed Tackle Podcast on YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Twitter. Um, yeah, do all that good stuff. If you're an AFL fan, and for those listening in the UK, you probably have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. For those Aussie viewers, if you're an AFL fan, go on over to the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. I'm an ever present there every Wednesday nights, and yeah, also head over to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel as well, where I do some stuff there on occasion. So yeah, there you go. There's all the plugging and stuff. I don't know why I decided to plug all my things that I do, but yeah, there you go. There's also a Linktree bio in my personal socials, and also the Inner Sanctum, and also the Two Foot Attacker podcast socials, not the Inner Sanctum socials, unfortunately. But yes, there we go. As I continuously chat shit. Okay, let's kick things off. 5-minute intro. So I said last week the intro would be condensed, and I ended up speaking for an hour and a half. So maybe with this slightly long intro, we can not speak for hours long. But let's kick things off. I've got no idea where to start. Let's start with one of the two things on my run sheet. Let's start things off with what happened with what should we do? You know what? I'm gonna flip this. I'm gonna completely reverse the structure. Let's start with A-League chat. What shall we? Let's start with A-League chat. So for those, once again, if you are listening to this not from the A-League or not from the A-League, not from Australia, you're probably just gonna skip to the second half of this podcast. But I will be let's touch on the A-League. So basically, I say let's touch on the A-League. Not a lot happened except Nestory Irankunda scored again, which colour my shock, right? Is that even a phrase? Imagine my shock. It's just he's just inevitable. He's just absolutely inevitable. He scored again on the weekend in Adelaide's 4-2 win over Newcastle in the Hunter. It was, once again, a textbook Irankunda finish, breaking in between the lines, using his incredible pace, and just hitting the ball at terminal velocity, it seems like, and just absolutely rifling it into the back of the net. And a very, very funny graphic was put out by the A-League socials, which I think is going to cause a lot of shit. But basically, I think a very legitimate question has to be asked is Nestory Irankunda better than Erling Haaland? Because at 17 years and 1 month, Nestory Irankunda has played 26 games, scored 7 goals, and got 2 assists. When Erling Haaland was 17 years old and 1 month, he had played 46 games, scored 6 goals, and only got 1 assist. So the stats don't lie, and I'm not saying anything, but look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm definitely not suggesting that Nestory Irankunda is a better player than Erling Haaland, but maybe something in that. Who knows? Who knows if Irankunda can become better than Erling Haaland if he isn't already. So that's going to cause a lot of shit, I can tell. If anyone decides to clip that up, I'll probably clip that up myself and chuck that on the TikTok, because that would be good fun. But yeah, I think it's just poignant to speak about Irankunda. We spoke about him last week, but like he's just so good. We spoke about him last week. I think we spoke about him last week and the week before. He's just so good. Like he's just inevitable. Like there's just something about him. There's an aura about him that is just frightening. Like he's frightening, and he's a player that, you know, when we look at the likes of when we think about crowd attraction for the A-League, and we think about how do we get more players, or how do we get more fans into the A-League grounds, the mind immediately goes to get better marquees in. Like we saw what the likes of Del Piero did for the league, and players like this, where it's like you had to go to watch Alessandro Del Piero, one of the best players, maybe not to ever play, but definitely a world class talent, right? And considering the heavy migrant community that football in Australia has, bringing someone like Del Piero in, very good, right? And a lot of people have been screaming, get more people like Del Piero in, right? I don't think that works, because it's just a sugar fix, because Del Piero isn't going to be here forever. And if you're going to just see Del Piero, the likelihood of you... I think the aim is to get Del Piero in, people go for Del Piero, and then they'll obviously you don't go to the football to watch one player. You go to the football to watch a whole team and to go to watch a football game. So when you watch Del Piero and you see other players and you see teams and you see goals and little bits of skill and some good players and some good saves and some good games, you might get attracted in a sense, or you might get that investment into the league, right? Which obviously is the main aim. So I can understand why marquees are an important part, and considering obviously the salary cap situation, we need to make the most of these marquees, which makes them even more valuable because there's not a lot of them, right? Which I completely understand. However, when you've got the likes of Irankunda, like I've never felt more. I mean, and I know despite the shitstorm that this season has been, for the most part. Of course, we all know what happened with Danny and his boys, and what he's done to the league, right? But I've never been more, like, I've never looked at a set of fixtures more in my life and thought, when is Adelaide United playing? Or when is another team, not other than Melbourne Victory, playing? Because you just need to watch Irankunda. You just need to. You just need to, at any chance you get, flick it on in the second half when it gets subbed on, because more often than not, something's going to happen. Whether it's a goal, an assist, a good piece of skill, or whatever, something is going to happen. Something is going to happen when he has the ball and when he's on the pitch. And it is he's one of the most, I wouldn't say electrifying, but he's a player that can truly attract people to games and can truly bring people to games and stuff, and can really make that impact, because he's so far more relatable than a lot of other players. He's far more relatable than like Del Piero, for example. Irankunda grew up in he's Australian, right? He played in youth academies. He would have grown up in similar areas to a lot of people. He's very humble, very gracious, very down to earth, and he's so talented and he's so young, and it makes a lot of people believe, and makes fantastic storylines. It's quite funny. You have Irankunda on one wing, Goodwin on the other. You have a Socceroos hero who's in the twilight of his career playing for his boyhood club. You have that on one wing, and then you have the future of the Socceroos, one of the most exciting prospects to come out of the country in a long, long time, with the nation's hopes kind of pinned on his shoulders at such a young age. This beautiful juxtaposition on either wing for Adelaide United creates such a fascinating story about them, and such a fascinating aura about them, and almost a must-watch kind of aura about Adelaide United this season, because I mean, I know as a Victory supporter, I hate them. I don't hate them, but I don't like them, right? I don't like the city. I just don't like Adelaide United, right? But I can appreciate, and I think as a neutral supporter, and I think doing this podcast has allowed me, and covering football more in depthly, especially over the last maybe 18 months, 16 months even, covering football more in depthly has allowed me to really remove my bias, and has allowed me to really remove my inherent biases and my inherent grudges and my not stereotypes, the word's not coming to me, but like my feelings, I guess, towards certain teams and players, etc., like Melbourne City and Sydney FC and Adelaide and Tottenham and Arsenal and all these clubs, right? Because obviously of my allegiances. And I think does it help that Victory suck and that Chelsea aren't that great? Potentially, but then again, I feel like if Adelaide were terrible, or if City were terrible and Victory were really good, I feel like the disenfranchisement of the rivalry would probably be even bigger, because it's like, we're so good, they suck, so let's just give them as many props as we can give them, like give them credit, because like to feel sorry for them in a sense. Whereas when you suck and your rivals are doing well, you want them to fail. And obviously when you're competing against each other, you want them to fail because it helps you, right? So it's obviously one of those things. So I feel like I'm not in a position where I feel like I'm not, the position in which I sit in terms of my allegiances and the clubs that I support kind of allow me to feel certain ways about certain clubs and change my opinions on certain clubs. But I just have this feeling about Adelaide United, similarly to how I feel about Arsenal. Just can't help but get caught up in it. Just can't help but get caught up in it all. And there's a lot of things to like about them. Obviously, Irakunda's one of them. Goodwin's another one. Cooper Stadium is another one. The fact that they've been a proper, ever-present A-League team, the fact that they aren't like a plastic club, the fact that they are a proper team helps. Kind of gives me a little bit more. Gives me a little bit more oomph, if that's even a word, to or if that's even a phrase, to like allow or support for a team to do well, because I like to see proper football clubs do well. That's why I don't like. That's why my hatred for Melbourne Heart grew even more with Melbourne City, because it's like, all right, you're one of them now. And despite the good football they play, the good players they have, and the good academy they have, I just have strong feelings towards that club, right? But similar with Melbourne, with Manchester City as well. But yeah, there's just something about Adelaide. I don't know how I got onto this tangent. I think this kind of suits well to be a reset pod, because there is no real plan about this. But yeah. So I appreciate Adelaide United a lot. And the fact that Irakunda's part of it, and the fact that Goodwin's part of it, I don't know. There's just something about them, and they're probably the next biggest challenges to Melbourne City. There's they're probably the next best. They're probably the next best challengers to Melbourne City. Of course, they are a team. They sit second on the ladder right now. City, of course, have that game in hand, in which they're already 1-0 up. They're 6 points behind. Obviously, you got Central Coast. Who are third. You got an impressive 4-1 win over Macarthur. Cummings scored a brace, so it's good to see him back on the scoreboard. I think Cummings, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he scored a brace, blanked in 2 games, scored a brace, blanked in 2 games, and then scored a brace again. I think that's the stat. Let me bring it up quickly. Cummings, here we go. So yeah, so he scored a brace against Sydney, then blanked, scored a brace against Perth, then blanked against Central Coast and Western Sydney, and then scored a brace against Macarthur. So they're like London buses. They don't come often, but when they come in a flurry. So yeah, I think this is shaping up to be a very, very competitive final series, because you've got City at the top of the heap, who of course got a very good 2-1 win over Brisbane, Aidan O'Neill, with his first strike in particular was exceptional. He's a player that I don't think will be playing in Australia for too much longer. He's a player who I don't think he's going to be playing in Australia for too much longer. One of the players that I mentioned last week, for the players that I think for some not young, but some players who definitely deserve to have a Socceroos cap. He's one of them. Yordi Boss was another one who played very well as well. I think he might have. He was like, I think he was exceptional. It was good. I wouldn't say exceptional. Got a little bit carried away there, but he was very good against Brisbane, and of course they do sit at the top of the heap. But then again, you've got the likes of Central Coast, Western Sydney, Wellington. To me, the battle for 6th is still very competitive. I think Newcastle are definitely a shout. I think Sydney are a shout. I think if Perth can get themselves go up and running, of course. They have been a little bit of a I want to say banter club, but early on they didn't have the best of results. They had a very good period in the middle of the season. They've had a poor run of things in recent times, but they got that 1-0 win over Western Sydney, which was massive for them. I think you can put a blanket over about 4 clubs: Sydney, Newcastle, Macarthur, and Perth. I think, and maybe Western United if they do beat Victory today, but I doubt it. But to me, I think it'll be Newcastle. I think the top 6 is set. If Newcastle are going to jump Sydney, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be Newcastle, Wellington, Western Sydney, Central Coast, Adelaide, City, in that order, which is going to shape up for a very, very interesting final series, because, of course, like I said, City are the out-and-out favourites. And then you've got Adelaide, Central Coast, 2 very entertaining clubs, 2 clubs that score loads of goals and are very, very good to watch. Western Sydney, who are the staple club in the top 6, who are just defensively solid, conceded 18 goals this season, the lowest amount of any other club in the country. Only scored 27, but when you concede 18, you don't have to score that many goals to get results. You've got Wellington, who are still very exciting. Of course, Zwahida as well. Zwahida has been absolutely phenomenal. I think the studies he's scored an assist. He's got a goal and an assist in I think 14 of his last 16 games, which is mental. He scored a goal in his last 1, 2, 3, 4 in his last 4 games: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So he's got 13 goal contributions in 15 games. That is insane. Like, that is insane. He didn't start his campaign off that well. Didn't score or get an assist in his first 5 games, but he's hit the ground running. Or he hasn't hit the ground running. He's fired up very quickly after his poor first month. And Oscar Zahida, maybe barring Jamie McLaren, who I think does top the goal scoring charts with. He scored how many goals this season has he scored? Probably a lot. His McLaren scored 18. Hasn't scored in his last 2. But so I think the title for best striker in the country. I think it's a very good conversation to have. Who is the best striker in the A League? Because you've got I mean, if we look at the Golden Boot race. If we look at the Golden Boot race quickly, you've got McLaren on 18 goals, Cummings on 14, and then Zwahida on 12. Cummings has 4 penalty goals, McLaren has 7 penalty goals, Zwahida has 2. So if you take away the penalty goals from the top 3 strikers in the league based on goals, Zwahida has 10, Cummings has 10, and McLaren has 11. When you look at McLaren, he's probably more of a poacher and is a more like getting behind kind of goal scoring striker. Cummings is far more creative, can drop deep, can dictate tempo a little bit in that final third. Zwahida obviously offers a very good aerial presence. Is a very good kind of target man, maybe not target man, but a very good presence in the box. I think we're seeing 3 very, very good strikers battle it out for the Golden Boot and battle it out for the title of the best striker in the league. If I had to play one game and take one striker out of McLaren, Cummings, and Zwahida, I would probably go with Zawida. Zahad. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Zwahida. I'm just going to say that. Zawada. That's probably how you pronounce his name. So that's probably how you pronounce his name. So out of Zawada, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm just looking at how it's spelled. I'm just going to pronounce it phonetically. So out of Zawada. That's it. I'm just gonna say Swahada. That's how I'm gonna pronounce it. But if I had to should probably have put it into Google Translate and figured out how to actually pronounce it. But if I had to take one strike out of McLaren, Cummings, and Zwahada for one game, it'd probably be Zwahada or Cummings. But McLaren's goal scoring record's unreal. It's interesting. For one game for my life, if I had to take one striker out of those 3, I would take Zwahada, probably. I just think he's probably arguably got the best all-round game, I think. But if you take McLaren, I don't blame you because he's just ruthless. And if you take Cummings, I don't blame you either because for the memes in it as well. Zwahada, Oscar Zwahada. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce his name. But yeah, I think that's enough on A-League chat. Victory, of course, are playing today. I'm going to try to wrap this podcast up before that so I can watch it. It starts in 37 minutes. The lineups are out. Pretty much the exact same lineup. It's the exact same lineup to the lineup we played against in the derby last week, which of course ended phenomenally. So it'll be interesting to see if Economides pushes beyond Fornaroli like he did last week. And then Prijovic and Botic up front for Western United. And Botic has scored in his last 2, scored 3 in his last 4. And I think he's just signed a new deal as well, which is good for Western United because he's one of the very few strikers, like I mentioned last week, that could potentially, or has some, I don't know how to describe it, but he's a striker that needs to kind of take on that mantle that obviously Australia have a lot of young strikers, none of whom are really taking the world by storm, unlike a certain Nestory Irankunda and potentially Garang Qual. But there you go. So I think that's enough A-League chat, to be honest. 24 minutes. 20 more minutes maybe, 25 more minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. So let's move on, and let's move back. So instead of moving into A-League chat, we're going to move out of A-League chat and go back into like European football chat. Nothing happened. So I'm just going to speak about two more other topics that surrounded football. Let's speak on what happened with Gary Lineker, shall we? Now, you may not have heard this if you're not on Twitter, but you may have not. I know Craig Foster did a column in the Sydney Morning Herald about it. Basically, Gary Lineker, we all know Gary Lineker, famous striker, Leicester supporter, played for Barcelona, played for Everton as well, very briefly, I believe. So, and of course, very famous pundit, Match of the Day host. Now, he was, I think, stood down or was removed as host of Match of the Day by the BBC because of some tweets that he put out that basically went against a proposed bill that could be passed in UK government, in UK Parliament. Basically, I don't want to get into the political side of things, but basically the bill was about illegal immigration and stopping the boats. I hope that doesn't get clipped up. So, of course, that happened. Lineker was basically saying that this is bullshit and this is ridiculous, as is his right. Freedom of speech exists, and he was stood down by the BBC. Now, I think he was anyway. I don't know if he's been reinstated. I know I heard Match of the Day happens and it wasn't that good. Without any of them, of course, Ian Wright said that he wasn't going to do it. Alan Shearer said he wasn't going to do it. So, by all accounts, Match of the Day was rubbish, and by all accounts, it was a pretty shitstorm of an episode. And I think he's been back to hosting it. I think, but basically, I think this is a wider conversation. This allows for a wider conversation about, I wouldn't say politics in football, but at least the response to politics in football. Because can I just say this, well and truly say this right now? There is no such thing as keep politics out of football. Politics and football are incredibly intertwined with each other, right? So to at least say that we can at least kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but to at least accept this conversation and to at least acknowledge how this conversation is going to go, we need to acknowledge that politics and football incredibly interlinked and will never be separated from each other, right? Hence why sports washing has been a thing forever, because football is, and sport in itself is, a superb way to get around or to sports wash and to make yourself look a lot better than what you are, right? Because of how good and because of the reputation that football has around the world. So football and politics intrinsically linked. Okay, that's first and foremost. Secondly, when there is obviously no right or wrong, maybe I should have said that, but there is, okay, people have different morals, people have different moral compasses, and regardless of your beliefs and regardless of your opinions, I do believe, as long as they're not ridiculously stupid, right? As long as they're not like, I'm not going to say any potential opinions that someone could have, but I think you understand the proper extreme, just ridiculous opinions, right? People have the right to freedom of speech, which is the main crux of this conversation. People have the right to freedom of speech, and people have the right to express their opinion in a respectful, non-confrontational, non-aggressive tone. By all means, right? And you cannot punish someone for having an opinion. You cannot punish someone for expressing that opinion in a respectful, or non-confrontational way. And I think the response by the BBC shows one thing to me, shows a couple of things, but firstly, what it shows is fear. It shows a lot of fear that they can't have, that the people that they have on their show can't have any agency over what their opinions are. And I think this is the problem in which a lot of mainstream media, in football in particular, has, is that there are no opinions anymore. There are no people anymore. It is just robots. You're getting robots to present shows because you can't have companies and organizations and TV broadcasters and talent agencies and production companies are scared of having someone who has a opinion, because when you have an opinion, there are people who disagree with that opinion, and when people disagree with that opinion, some shit can happen, right? And I think it's about having the knowledge and the I think it's about having the knowledge and, I wouldn't say integrity, but having the I think it's about having the accountability and the responsibility and the knowledge of understanding I can have an opinion, but I need to construct my opinion in a way in which is not confrontational and is not aggressive. That's what I think has happened, and yet I think that has happened in this scenario, and yet the BBC have still responded in such a way. I think freedom of speech is very important, and I think obviously within reason, and I think you need to be able, because you need to be able to understand where you are and who you are and what you are trying to portray, right? And the influence you have. And the reason I say this is because I was scrolling through the timeline recently, and I tweeted about this. I think I might have actually, no, I decided against tweeting about it, but something came up on my timeline in which it was a clip from Sky, from, I think it was from the post game kind of punditry of a Chelsea Tottenham match. In the Chelsea won the game 2-0 at the new London, at the new Tottenham Stadium. I think it was the 2-0 game where Willian scored a brace. Anyway, good game, that one. Anyway, it was a game in which Antonio Rudiger was at least allegedly to have been racially abused, and Gary Neville was very public on the broadcast and was very out there and very passionately pleading, in a sense, to the FA and to the PFA and to the people in charge to protect footballers, because it was about, he made the comparison in which we can point, they could have pointed fingers to a bunch of other federations who weren't doing a whole lot of things. Of course, I think it was around about that time in which some things had happened in Bulgaria, I want to say, with the England supporters. Maybe things had happened in Italy with, maybe it would have been Moise Kean. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was around about that same timeline, I'm pretty sure. And he was basically saying that we can point fingers to federations all we want, but we need to look at our own backyard and get our stuff sorted. And the host basically had to put a disclaimer saying that those weren't the views of Sky Sports, they were the views of Gary Neville. And I didn't really think about that until I saw it on the timeline recently, or I saw it on the timeline yesterday, and I was thinking about it, and it made me think a lot about the way that we respond as people, as media, as pundits, as organisations, as broadcasters. It made me think anyway about the way that we respond to things, because we're there to watch football, right? When I switch on Optus Sport, but if you're in the UK and you switch on Sky Sports, or you switch on the BBC, or if you switch on ITV, switch on Amazon Prime, switch on fucking DAZN or whatever, you're there to watch sport. You're there to watch Chelsea play away at Brentford, midday kickoff. That's what you're there to watch, right? You're not there, well, maybe not midday kickoff, 4:30 on a Monday. That's what you're there to watch. You're not there to watch a political debate. You're not there to abuse the TV about what this person thinks about this person, or this person thinks about this thing. You're there to watch a football. And I understand, and obviously I made the point earlier that football and politics are incredibly linked. However, there needs to be a line that you draw, and of course this line is incredibly arbitrary. I understand this line is incredibly arbitrary, because where do you draw it, right? Where do you draw your moral line, right? But it goes back to the thing of, you need to be able to separate it to an extent, and you need to be able to understand, okay, this person, within reason, obviously, and I need to clarify within reason, because there are some things in which some people can think, and there are some opinions that some people can have, and if they voice those opinions, they shouldn't be in a position of influence. But you need to be able to allow people to express their opinions, because that is how you develop connections with people, and that is how you get people. That is how you develop a kind of two-way communication kind of structure. If I'm telling you something, and if I'm showing you something, and if I'm the only person doing anything, and you're just sitting there consuming it and not developing your own opinions about things, your life is lived vicariously through me, or through whoever, based on whatever they say or based on whatever I say, that creates a lot of issues, right? That creates a lot of issues. And it creates that person who is very uninteresting, and is very not personable, and is very disconnected. You need people who are connected to humanity. And being connected to humanity means having opinions, and means being more than just the match of the day presenter, right? That is what Gary Lineker is, and I think it is getting to the point now where we are punishing freedom of speech, and we are punishing people having opinions, which is a dangerous game, very dangerous game. I think I waffled a bit. I hope my point got across well. I hope it did. I don't know if it did, but I hope it did. Yeah, I think that's basically all I need to say on that. I think it is one of those things, right, where it's like, where do you draw the line? I don't know. Gary Lineker is obviously very good at what he does. Match of the day is obviously a big part of his life, and it's a big part of Alan Shearer's life, I assume, and Ian Wright was another one who voiced his displeasure over the decision. I'm assuming, and I can almost guarantee that they are big parts of their life, or it is a big part of their life. So you can't dismiss it. You can't just say, get over yourself. And they can't move on. Well, they can move on. Gary Lineker can move on. Alan Shearer can move on. And Ian Wright can move on. They don't need match of the day, right? But match of the day is such an institution that is almost a battle worth fighting for. And I think they've won that battle in the end. I think they've backed down. The powers that be have backed down, and they have allowed common sense to shine through in a way. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, let's move on. And let's touch on the Barcelona corruption. How have I spoken for nearly 40 minutes? I'm shocked. This is going to be a short episode. If this will tick over 50, I think. Let's speak on the Barcelona corruption. Now, I kind of saved this topic. Because for a rainy day, just in case something happened in which I need to speak about. But basically, this has been in the news for quite a while. But basically, Barcelona, of course, are being investigated for some fraudulent funds in which have been sent to, I think it was like the referees, like the assistant referees association, or like the referees association, or something like that. Now, a lot of things have come out about this. The defense in which a lot of Barca people and Barca fans have jumped to is, oh, people pay referees off. People pay referees in terms, not pay referees off, but people pay for referee consultants to understand how games are refereed and what the limits are and what constitutes yellow card and red card and dangerous play, etc., right? So maybe it was that. But I guess the fact that this has only come out is the only reason this has come out is because Barcelona are being investigated for their fraudulent funds, and the fact that they're being now, I think they're being investigated because of this as well, is quite funny. But I don't know if they've been found guilty. I don't think they have. I think I would have known if they had. So it will be kind of. It will be. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted. It will be interesting to see what the potential punishment will be, and I think the conversation about this isn't about what happened; it's about the response to it and whether or not there should be more regulations in place to not allow this to happen. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I can't be able to do my research because I don't really give a shit. But I say this as I'm about to cover it, but I think it's quite funny how we're in a position now in which there is a lot of, when there is so much money in the game, it's very hard to keep track of it. Very hard to keep track of it. And especially in a time in which people are so smart, people are smarter than ever. The technology is better than ever. The ability to get away with things is a lot easier than what it was a long time ago. And we're in a position now where being able to remain competitive is arguably the number one kind of priority, right? And making Champions League football, winning the leagues, winning cups, signing the best players is the number one priority because it brings more money into the club, right? And when you're a club like Barcelona who is in desperate need of money, it's quite funny how this has come about, right? Should there be more regulations in place to stop all of this happening, potentially? Should there be a kind of audit? I'm assuming there would be, but should there be more stringent and regular audits of club finances, potentially? But I guess people will find a way to get around that more often, right? I don't think there's a quick fix to stopping potential things like this happening. I think this goes to show that if Barcelona have been caught doing it, if Barcelona have been caught doing it, I assume there's going to be other clubs of a similar ilk who could be doing similar things. And I think the corruption, obviously, the corruption kind of allegations, I wouldn't say it could have happened to a better club, but when you are so successful and when you are so rich and when you are so popular and when you are so respected, there's always skeletons in the closet. Always. There's very little perfect football clubs out there. So I don't think we should be surprised. Some skeletons are a little bit more out of the closet than others. But I think it's just quite ironic. I think it's just quite ironic that all of this has come out. Like I said, it came out a while ago, but still, they are being. I'm just gonna quickly look it up on Google to see what I can find about it. So they have been charged. What's this? On Friday, FC Barcelona was charged on Friday by the Barcelona provisional, I think maybe, prosecution's office with continued corruption between individuals on the sports field, in addition to other charges in relation to alleged payment scandal to which has rocked Spanish football. Right, so they have been charged. Okay. So maybe they should be kicked out of the Spanish league then. I don't know. I think we'll just have to wait and see. I probably should have done more research on this, to be honest. I probably should have cared more if I was going to speak about it. That's quite funny. But, yeah, so it's actually quite, yeah, so they've accused them, I guess, have been charged. I'm assuming this will go to some court and will be challenged and stuff, but once we know more details, I think I'll speak about it a little bit more. I think once it comes to a conclusion, I'll speak about it. But, yeah, it's quite funny. I think because it's not in the English game, because it's not in the English conscience, I think it's pretty maybe put on the back burner a little bit. But I think it's interesting though. I think it's interesting that it's happened. If Barca are found guilty, what happens? Here we go. In documents presented to Barcelona court on Friday, prosecutors said FC Barcelona reached and maintained a strictly confidential verbal agreement with Enrique's not going to attempt to pronounce that name. Not even going to try. If you know the person who I'm referring to, you will know why. Not even going to attempt that because I'll butcher it, and if I butcher it, I'm fucked. With Enriquez, so that in his capacity as vice president of the Spanish Football Referees Committee, and in exchange for money, he would carry out actions trending to favour Barcelona in decisions of making referees in the matches played by the club. Right, okay. So that's what prosecutors said. In terms of other sporting punishments, La Liga has said it cannot investigate because the case relates to events that took place more than 3 years ago. So statute of limitations obviously has passed. What a surprise. What a shock. Honestly. Why is that even a thing for stuff like this? It's not possible for there to be a sporting punishment from our side. It's been 5 years since those payments stopped, and these kinds of rule breaches are timed barred in our rule book 3 years after taking place. That's fucking bullshit, honestly. Right, okay. Did they get kicked out of the Spanish league? Who knows? Let me know your thoughts in the below. What should happen to Barcelona? But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I guess we'll keep following this up as news breaks. They've been charged. I don't think they've been found guilty yet. I don't think. Yeah, they haven't been found guilty. They've been charged. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So yes, it is one of the it is an interesting development. Very interesting development. All right. Let's finish. Let's move. Let's end this. Oh, my dog has just barked loudly. You can probably hear her. She's gonna bark again. There you go. You could definitely hear her that time. Anyway, I think that's her sign to say shut up and wrap things up. Apologies if this is a slightly short episode, slightly more rambly, slightly more just all over the place. Nothing happened. Nothing of interest happened. Right? Last week I spoke for an hour and a half, so listen to the second half of last week's pod again if you want more of my ramblings. I don't know why you would, because, yeah, but anyway, let's move on. Let's preview, shall we? Let's preview, and then let's wrap things up. Alright. Victory Western United is happening in 15 minutes, so I'm going to go finish this and go watch that. Really hope Victory win. We need to win. I'm going to go 1-0 victory, Fornaroli goal in the 72nd minute. You, of course, would have known what happened, so if I'm wrong, there you go. Champions League is back. We're going to go quick fire predictions again. Porto, Inter 1-0, go through 2-0 on aggregate. City, Leipzig, City 3-1, go through 4-2 on aggregate. Napoli, Frankfurt, Napoli 1-0, go through 3-0 on aggregate. Real Madrid, Liverpool 3-0, 4-2 on penalties. Fuck it. Europa League, Jesus Christ. Sevilla versus Fenerbahce, 1-0 Sevilla, no, 1-0 Sevilla, go through 3-2. Feyenoord versus Shakhtar, 2-0 Feyenoord, 3-1 on aggregate. Freiburg versus Juventus, Freiburg 2-0, go through 2-1 over Juventus. Betis versus United. I'm going to go Betis 2-0. And obviously, Man United go through 4-3 on aggregate. Arsenal versus Sporting Club. I found out recently they don't like being called Sporting Lisbon because that would be like calling Chelsea London, which I was like, there you go, that would be annoying. So don't call them Sporting Lisbon, call them Sporting Club, I think, or Sporting Club, or just Sporting. Anyway, they've got their 2 all over Arsenal. I reckon it'll be 1-0 Arsenal to go 3-2 on aggregate. Leverkusen versus some Hungarian club, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. Leverkusen 1-0, go 3-0 on aggregate. Real Sociedad versus Roma. Roma 1-0, go through 3-0 on aggregate. And Union versus Union. Belgium versus Germany. I think Union Berlin will win 1-0 away from home and go through 4-3 on aggregate. Any interesting thing happening? Not really. Great. FA Cup action. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, next week. So not next podcast, but the podcast after is international break. So sick. That's going to be great. All right. Thank you very much for watching another episode of the 2 Foot Attack podcast. Apologies if this is a terrible. If this has been not a good episode, bit of a reset pod, more of me chatting shit. You got some carpentry kind of tips, and you got like a little bit of a tour of my house with the wall and the backdrop, the reasoning behind it. At the start of it, this has been a shambles. I apologise, but if something happens next week regarding football, then I'll speak about it. So there we go. All right. I say that Barcelona got charged for match fixing. Barcelona literally got charged with paying the refs. Maybe I should have spoken more about that. Maybe I should have made that the main thing about it. But anyway, that who cares? It's fine. All right. Thank you very much for watching another episode of the 2 Foot Attack podcast. Subscribe, like, to all the good stuff. Thank you very much for sticking around. Tune in next week if you want a proper podcast. There you go. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around. See you guys next time, and goodbye.